everybody. Welcome back to the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast. Hope that you're having a wonderful day today. We've got another phenomenal show plan. They're all phenomenal, but I can tell Eido this is going to be the most phenomenal, and you can agree with me. And we're going to have some fun, though, right?
Absolutely. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Steve.
Awesome, man. You should meet my podcast promoter, Doug Sandler. He's a big car guy, but I think he actually has a podcast about Mustangs. Like the whole show's
Cool.
about Mustangs.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of cars.
Okay, well, maybe I'll make that inroad for you. Connections happening here on the Be That Lawyer podcast, everybody, right away. So wonderful. We're going to start off with the quote of the show. Now, I feel like this is from a movie, but you've been saying it, I guess, for a while, so we'll give you credit. Failure is not an option. So welcome to the show, Eido, and also, why is that your favorite quote?
Thanks, Steve. Everybody's got quotes that they heard from someone else. And what I have found is for my life philosophy, I find that people spend a lot of time with contingency planning and what happens if my plan fails, what's my secondary plan, my tertiary plan. To me, I want a plan, and I want a plan that's going to work and be practical, and failure is not an option. So I remember back when I started my firm in May of 2011, my wife is a school teacher, and I know your wife is a teacher as well, and so you can appreciate their schedules are extremely structured. They have unions, they know that their clients, the students, are coming in like clockwork every year at a certain time on a certain date, and they're going to stay, and you can plan all your vacations. There's certainly downsides to the career, but it is very structured. And so when I was going to set out and leave my gigantic law firm and start my practice, she said, well, what if this doesn't work? And I said, listen, I've been doing this for 10 years. Failure to me is not an option.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. I understand the business. I will do everything that needs to be done so that I don't fail, because I don't have a secondary plan. I don't have a plan B. We're going to do this. And so I put in all the time, all the effort, initially, like any entrepreneur can appreciate, they think that you start a business and all of a sudden the first thing you do is go on vacation. It's the opposite. I was living in the office because I knew that we had rent that we had to meet. I needed to get paid. We had bills. And so to me, I put every effort into not failing, but I carry that through to everything that I do, because I want to make sure that the plans that I have in place are simply going to be accomplished. And so failure is just not an option.
Yeah. And again, there's some small failures that we can learn from in life, right? I mean, you put a nail through your hand, or maybe I don't put my hand so close to the nail gun, right? But then there's your business on the line, your career on the line, your healthcare on the line, whatever it might be, where we just can't, there's no risk involved. Like we have to do it. We have to get through that. So I love that's your, and again, I think there's a lot of people listening that can take away from that and say, look, I've got to change jobs, and failure and getting the right place for myself is not I've got to make this work. And the more you can do to plan and execute and accomplish, the better. Really great stuff. So I feel like when I'm introducing you, Eido, it's like you're like a Dos Equis commercial, like the most interesting man in the world. We met and I was like, I have to interview this guy. He's doing more than anyone I know in so many different areas that are maybe even like unrelated. But I would love for you to give your background. Eido Walny, everybody, is the managing partner of Walny Legal Group. And yeah, give us your Reader's Digest short version of where, how you came to be and some of the things that you're involved in, because it's super interesting.
Yeah, so my quickie bio when I talk nationally is I'm the founding managing partner of my law firm, boutique national estate planning group with amazing clients all over the country. I'm also the president/mayor of my town. I have a cufflinks business. I am a consultant for a financial advisory consultant company out of California. I just until recently was the editor-in-chief of a national estate planning journal. I serve on a number of national boards. I restore classic cars, generally at night and on weekends. The list goes on and on and on. I mean, I really find myself to have diverse interests, and I prioritize things. I may not sleep as much, but I've never missed a child's performance. I've never missed a parent-teacher conference. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I prioritize things in life to get the most out of a day that I possibly can.
Yeah. And I think we can all learn from that, it's like sometimes we feel so stressed and overwhelmed with just the billable hour, just certain particular things, and how important it is to really become a student of the game of time management, or become someone that has the ability to prioritize life and things that are important, and then work through to get the most out of it, because you really only got one shot at this thing called life. So we need to make the most of it. We don't want to live with regret, or feel that hey, we're in our 70s and we wish we had done all these things.
100%. I mean, everything is a balance, right? So I think sometimes the pendulum swings too far to one direction or the other. I don't want to be chained to my desk. I don't want to never work and pretend like money's going to magically rain from the sky. But I do want to enjoy the things that I'm doing. I do have diverse interests. I find that those diverse interests feed into one another. We were just chatting at the beginning of the podcast about, connections with car people. Car people are great clients. Those people know other people, and all of a sudden sort of one hand starts feeding the other. And I love that stuff. That's fantastic. And it makes life so interesting.
Yeah. And one thing that we had talked about in our previous conversation was how, quotes like, failure is not an option. And I'm putting out, Fretzinisms, unique things that I come up with and put out. And then there's, millions of quotes from successful and famous people that we can follow and take the wisdom from what they're saying, and try to help us lead our lives down a positive path. Let's go through some of the quotes that you sort of live by to accomplish everything you've accomplished that I think would be helpful to my audience. Where would you like to start here?
Man, let's start with the quote from early 2001, or I guess late 2001, early 2002, with regard to my mentor at my first big firm. So the backstory here is I went to law school in the late 1990s, early 2000s. That was kind of a crazy go-go time in the legal and business community. It was the dot-com boom. Our salaries would literally go up while we were sitting in class, right? We'd get an email at the time, and they would just tell us, hey, by the way, your starting salary just went up, before we even showed up for our first day of work. So ultimately, we graduate, go through the summer. My first day of real work, meaning showing up at the office in my suit, was September 4th, 2001. And so that was a great first week, but the second week started a little brutal. September 11th happens. Even here in Milwaukee, people were freaking out. It automatically changed the business and legal dynamics. Reality changed. I mean, it's still different now than it was my first day of work. And so one of the things that the firm I was at the time did was assign us mentors. And my mentor had some interesting advice at the time, much of which I've forgotten. But there's one thing I've never forgotten. And he said to me at the time, this firm can take away basically everything from you. They can take away your salary, your assistant, your office, everything. There are two things that the firm can never take away from you, that no one can ever take away from you. And those two things are your knowledge base and your contacts. And that is what you should always spend time on and develop, because those will always be marketable skills wherever you're at, whenever you're doing it. And those will make you important. And when I first arrived in Milwaukee, I knew one person. And now I've gotten to the point where I'm seen as a hub for connecting people, not only within the city, but also nationally. If you need a crazy connection in Fargo, North Dakota, or, Colorado Springs, not only have I met someone there, but I've probably had lunch with them, spent face-to-face time with them. I've made it my business to try to connect people, much like you have, and that served me really well. And then, of course, you want to be an expert in your craft. I'm not a master of all things, but I want to be really good at the thing that I do, because this is what I'm making my, life, building my life around, and it's empowered me to do other things. People expect that you're going to be good at the thing that you're doing, right? When you go to a steak restaurant, people just assume that the steak is going to be good. The difference between a good steak restaurant and a great steak restaurant has nothing to do with the steak and everything to do with everything else, because clients assume that that product is going to be good. And so you never want to let them down. And I've built the last, 25 years of my career since hearing that advice on that bit of advice. And actually just recently reached out to that mentor who I haven't talked to in quite some time, and thanked him, because I don't think I'd have the career that I have now without that word, that word of wisdom.
Yeah. And of course, this relates back to, how lawyers control their careers, how they have the freedom that they desire. And if you don't have your own relationships, your own business, you're at the will and the whim of the firm you work for, or the ability to not, the ability to make the right decisions for you and your family. So this is right in line with what I've been saying without a mentor, just knowing the legal industry, that yes, you have to be great at what you do. Number one, you can't suck, right? Because you're not going to keep clients if you suck. And you're not doing anybody any good. And then the second is owning those relationships, whether you're on your own or whether you're with a firm. And I think, unfortunately, not maybe the people that listen to this show, but there's still so many lawyers that don't realize this, or they realize it, but they're not willing to make that extra effort to develop those relationships. And so then what do they really have? They have a job, they're maybe making a great living, but it could be temporary.
I mean, listen, it is always a mistake, regardless of whether it's in the law or in any other profession, to think that people outside of where, your office are looking at you the same way that you're looking at yourself. I know what makes me special, but I know that the people walking down the sidewalk right now just see me as a lawyer. I'm a lawyer like every other lawyer. And so to me, it's really important to not only differentiate myself in a professional sense, but try to differentiate myself with every single contact I have with clients, prospective clients, referral sources, to stand out from that crowd, because otherwise we become commoditized. And then there's no difference in me hiring you or the next person or the next person after that. And now you're just swimming in the ocean, and that is a bad place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's bloody. So let's move on. What's another quote that has sort of driven your life in a positive direction?
So probably about, gosh, this had to be probably around 2008, 2009. I had a client who was a big manufacturer in southern Wisconsin. And we were having a pretty interesting conversation about life. He was still is a very gregarious guy. And we were talking about business and making money and being successful. And one of the things that he told me that's really struck a nerve is that you should never do things for money, which seems counterintuitive, right? We're all in this to make money. But the rest of his quote was, you should never do things for money, should always let money be the reward for the good things that you do.
Mm.
And I think this is another trap for lawyers in particular, but business people in general, is that we always are looking for, how do I make a little bit more money? Where am I leaving money on the table? And I think his point, and I flushed this out with him, was if you're motivated and taking actions just to get paid, just to make a few extra dollars, what that ends up doing for you is incentivizing you to do things that probably you shouldn't be doing, because you're chasing a dollar. If you focus on what's right, what's good for you personally, good for the business, good for your clients, the money isn't the motivation to do something. The money is the reward for the things that you did.
Yeah.
And I found that that struck a nerve with me, because remember, I'd spent a lot of time at big firms, and big firms, to me, the things that I heard would still make my head spin, in terms of looking at ways to just generate revenue. And it drove me crazy because it motivated people the wrong way. But once I heard that and spoke to the client and really marinated with that idea, I really changed my outlook on things. I felt like intuitively I was kind of doing that anyway, but
Yeah.
now I was doing it in a very conscientious manner, where I wasn't motivated by the dollars. I let the dollars be the reward for the good things that I was doing. And it is amazing. His point was, if you do it, you'll actually make more money. And I have absolutely found that to be the case, which is incredible.
Yeah. And the easiest example that I've seen recently are lawyers who are jumping ship from a firm that they actually enjoy and like and are doing well, to make 25 or 30% more at a bigger firm, at a different firm, only to realize a year, 6 months to a year in, what a big mistake I made. Money isn't everything. I did it for the money, and guess what? I got burned. Then they come crawling back to their firm, who probably takes them back mainly because they need them, and hopefully they left on good terms. But that's happening pretty regularly. And so again, I think it's right in line with what you're saying. We've got to do right by others, and the reward comes, in return tenfold.
I mean, this is my point earlier about the commoditization about lawyers. I mean, that your point is exactly that as well, right? We look at, my firm is the same as that firm, except if they pay me more, what's the difference? And you quickly realize that that's not the case. I mean, we all have personalities and cultures and other things that are why we're at and why we're happy. And if we're just chasing dollars, it leads to a path of unhappiness. I mean, for us personally, we're a boutique estate planning shop. It's really all that we do. And we've had a lot of people approach us and say, well, why don't you add this practice area? Why don't you add this service? Or why don't you do this, that, or the other? And we've always gone back to, that might make us some money in the short term, but in the long term, what it does is help us lose our identity. We may be stepping on the toes of referral sources or other partners that we do work with. And so while on face, it might help us generate more revenue, in the long term, we lose who we are. We start to set off adrift in that ocean again. And it's a bad choice for us. And so there have been some really tough conversations I've had, knowing that me personally, I'd make a lot more money, to say, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to walk away. We'd still like to do business with you, but we're not going to do that in-house, or we're not going to offer that service. But I think in the long term, those decisions have been good decisions for us and for the firm, and the results speak for themselves.
Yeah. There's a quote I think that I have that I definitely didn't come up with, totally stolen, but I've had this in my head maybe since I was in my mid 20s, and it's followed me along. And it's right in line with what you're saying, though. It's you get what you want out of life by helping other people get what they need, or what they want out of life. So like, I'm going to get what I want. If I'm helping attorneys to be successful and I'm focusing on them and their success, I'm going to then in return be successful in them, but also in the referrals that come and the business that's been built and the things that come back to me, not by being greedy or being self-centered, but I'm helping others, knowing that and again, just being selfless, I think, has a reward, especially if you do it intelligently. Like, meaning, I used to try to help everybody with everything all the time, and of course you can't do that and have time and have a life. So I still try to help everybody, but it's I'm in a specific area. I'm not going to help the local Avon lady or the local Amway salesman the same way I'm going to help a local attorney or the attorney that needs help, or someone that needs a vendor for something. So I think that's kind of the difference. But again, helping others as a way to get it returned in networking that works, and just in life.
One of the sayings that we have here in the office is, don't keep score. I think, especially when it comes to referrals and things like that, referrals are the lifeblood of a lot of law firms. And what we tend to do is say, John sent me one referral, so I owe him one referral. One of the things that we quickly figured out is referrals are all different. And a trap for lawyers is to keep score and say, I owe them or they owe me. Do what's right. Serve the client best. You will match them up. You will make somebody happy. And if you get good results, that's much more important than what's coming back, or the fact that you paid someone back who you owed a favor to. Don't look at it like that. And when you stop keeping score, first of all, you'll be a lot happier, because you won't, have this chip on your shoulder that all these people owe me something. But you'll also find that things are coming in to you from all sorts of different directions. And a dollar is not worth a dollar in and out. And what do I mean by that? So for us in estate planning, we get a lot of referrals from, say, insurance agents. Well, if they refer an estate plan into us, it's very transactional. We kind of do the work, make a fee, and we're done. But if we make a referral back to the insurance agent, they're getting premium payments, on an annual or quarterly basis for years and years and years to come. And so if an agent says to us, well, I sent you one and you sent me one and we're even, well, are we really even? We're not even at all. But we don't care, because we don't keep score. What's important to us is that we sent you a good referral and you took care of that client, and that client's happy. That's the goal. If we make something back, whether it's from you or the next person or someone in accounting or financial services, we don't care. We're all in a greater community, and we're all trying to serve the clients best. And when that happens, that's the reward. And then if we make money at the end, it's the money we get paid for doing good things. It's not why we do those things.
Yeah, I guess the only caveat I would add to that is, because I love everything you just said, is just be careful of takers. People that are just using you, and just trying to take from you, and they're not in a position to reciprocate, or they don't want to reciprocate. So just it's not keeping score, but it's just kind of keeping your head on a swivel and recognizing, hey, this insurance person is just working me, give me your, there was a time, I don't know if you remember this, this is going back to maybe the 2000s when financial planners, I'm not going to name the name of the company, but they would meet with you for the initial meeting just to network, and they'd be like, can I have 10 names of your family and friends? And then they would go and hound them. And it was like, what did I just give them some names? Now I'm getting these angry calls. So just be careful of this, of the salespeople and the takers that exist out there too, and leverage relationships the way they're supposed to be leveraged.
I mean, I know exactly what firm you're talking about. Couldn't agree more. It's just like anything in life. There are people with bad motivations or selfish motivations, and so you should always be aware of that. Don't let yourself be victimized. But I think there are a lot of good professionals out there,
Yeah.
good lawyers, good other service providers, and so obviously you want to surround yourself with those good people. The people asking you for a few names and whatnot, they're not going to keep coming back to you because eventually you'll figure out like, stop hounding my brother. He doesn't want to do work with you. But the people who are trying to build good referral relationships with you or build a team where they can better service their clients, I mean, those are really good circles to start orbiting around.
Yep. Yep. Awesome. All right. I think we may have time for one more good quote. What else? What else you got in your back pocket?
Man, I don't know that I've got another good quote in the pocket, but one of the policies that we always have in the office is that we have this thing called the smiles in, smiles out policy. And I think this is something lawyers in particular should always strive towards, which is, when we're first meeting with that client, everything tends to be really jovial and happy, right? The clients generally, unless it's a divorce or litigation, they're coming in and they're generally, especially for us with estate planning, they're happy to meet you. They're happy to talk about the work. It's a very cordial relationship. And I think oftentimes over the course of that relationship, that smile starts to burn away, especially when calls aren't getting returned in a timely manner, emails aren't being returned in a timely manner, invoices start piling up. And so one of the things we have here in the office is what we call the smiles in, smiles out policy, which is that we want to see the same smile the last time we meet with you that we did the first time we met with you. And so how do we do that? It's by being timely with return calls, returned emails. If the client needs something, even if I don't have the answer, I acknowledge the client. I say, hey, I'm going to get back to you by a certain date. I get back to them by that date. If I believe that an invoice is more than they're expecting, I try to preempt it either by writing a little bit down or contacting them and explaining what's happened or why this is happening. I think all too often people in the legal services field believe that just getting to that engagement and starting to have some invoices paid, that's the goal. And for us, that's not the goal because, if the client had a bad experience or paid you way too much, I think the statistic is you're 7 times more likely to complain about something than you are to give someone a compliment. And so if the client had a bad experience, regardless of what it was, so-and-so didn't return calls, they ignored me. Clients oftentimes feel ignored, even if you're not really ignoring them. The bills were out of control. Believe me, they're going to let people know, and you will develop the reputation of being the person who doesn't return phone calls or charges way too much. And that's not to say we're cheap, but I want to say that, I want clients to understand the value that they're getting. And when we absolutely crush it in terms of the customer experience, again, going back to that, the client assumes that the work is good. But there's a lot more to the overall experience than just the work. And I think lawyers, doctors, a lot of other professions, they lose sight of the overall client experience. And we try really, really hard not to have that happen. And frankly, I mean, for us to go toe to toe with some of the biggest firms in the country, because we're a tiny boutique estate planning shop based out of Milwaukee, a lot of that has had to do with the overall client experience. Because again, I can't make the trust that I draft make you a sandwich. It is what it is. And it's the same thing that any other firm can draft who knows what they're doing. But where we really crush a lot of our competitors is the overall client experience. And when those people are happy and tell a couple of their other friends that they're happy, especially some of the nice clients that we've got, that's what's really driven business to amazing levels where
Yeah.
I'm super happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to fail when you're providing a high level of service and people are walking away from paying a big fee or whatever it might be with a smile on their face because they know it was handled well. I'm assuming that there are some expectations that you set up with clients to help manage them and manage the way that the work gets done with the way their brains are functioning. Can you speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, I mean, we always try to have conversations on the front end about what a client can expect and what my expectations are. I find that, you know, my expectations of myself and my own people are generally higher than what the client is going to expect. I mean, I with technology today, regardless of where you're at, you can return a phone call, you can return an email almost anywhere you are at any time. I mean, I recently took a trip overseas and I knew what the time zone difference was. You know, there are some clients I can push off a little bit. I don't ignore them. I let them know, hey, I'm not available. Can we talk on X and X date? But I had some really important clients I needed to get a hold of. It happened to be in Japan at the time. And I would just set up the calls later in the afternoon here in the US so that it was early morning in Japan. Those people had no idea I was actually in Japan because my phone just rang through over there. This wasn't every client, but if it was important, their expectations were met because I could find a few minutes to talk to them and alleviate this concern. And I think boundaries are important, but my boundaries and expectations of myself, and again, knowing that a lot of clients just look at us as a commodity, I want to make sure that every opportunity I've got and my lawyers have to impress the client, we're taking advantage of. But sure, that has to be managed so that I'm not getting phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, yeah, not all phone calls need to go to you. I mean, there are,
Correct.
you've got people under you that could field those calls and handle those questions. And unless it's something like mission critical, top level, in your way, you don't get those calls. You've set those expectations and set up the team to handle it so that you don't have to, and you can be away without, having, disruptions every day.
For sure. And that's a skill that I am also getting better at. But, I think lawyers have a propensity to, if they know that a call is going to be unpleasant, they let it go to voicemail. And I don't do that generally because I know that if the client's upset, first of all, generally I know why they're upset. If I let them stew or I let this sort of bounce around in their head more, and now they think, I'm trying to avoid them, the situation gets worse.
Yeah.
And so I tend to just pick up that call. First of all, picking up the call sometimes will just diffuse the call itself because they weren't expecting to talk to you.
Right.
But engage with them, hear them out. If there's a solution, find the solution. It's incredible how much, I can talk angry people off the ledge just by chatting with them. They want to be heard. And again, I think lawyers tend to hide from that and let things go to voicemail and let it stew for a few days. Don't do that. It's a mistake.
Yeah. Well, so many great life experiences and things that you're sharing today on the show. And I hope everyone listening is, taking notes and taking, heeding the words of wisdom that are being shared here today. We do like to wrap up with a game-changing book, game-changing podcast. Certainly, would love to hear if there's one or two that you think are good, or if you just want to mention one that, when maybe this one, this Be That Lawyer is pretty good. But any thoughts on that? Just to maybe share a little bit with that with the team, with everybody listening.
So I grew up in an entrepreneurial background, and my dad owns a business. My two grandfathers own businesses. And so I sort of grew up with this entrepreneurial mindset. And when I first started the firm, I always looked at myself coming last. I wanted to make sure that my employees were well taken care of. My clients had everything they needed. We had whatever equipment and supplies we ever needed. And I found myself putting myself last pretty often. And when you do that, you get to the end of the year and maybe profitability was not where you thought it would be because you've spent more money trying to accommodate all these other people. And you as the entrepreneur who took all the risks and put a lot of things on yourself, you feel like you shorted yourself. And about probably close to 10 years ago now, maybe a little bit less, a good friend of mine on the East Coast near Virginia turned me on to Profit First. So Profit First is this idea that, every month you take a little bit off the table and put it in an account, and that's sort of your profitability for yourself as the business owner. And we don't follow the formula exactly, but it's a really interesting idea and concept that's really changed the way that we approach some of the business here. And it's, the basic fundamental of it is if you carve a little bit away and put it aside and don't look at it and don't think about it, it's as if it doesn't exist, and you'll compensate for the few percentages that aren't in your bank account. And it's amazing how that's true. I mean, we did a version of that, not really knowing that we were doing it, but now we've done it a little bit more formulaically. And so, I mean, that's changed the way we do some of our business. And really, as an entrepreneur, to put yourself first, at least a little bit, has been fantastic, because we take risks and we put a lot of work in, and those entrepreneurs need to get rewarded, because it can be really tough. And I would throw that out there. Take a
Yeah.
read. It's really interesting.
Yeah, check it out. I had Arjan Robbins on the show not so long ago. He's got Perfect Profit First for Lawyers. I think there might be a podcast of the same name. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, look, we're in this to help people. We're also in this to make a living, and we got to pay for kids, and we got to pay for all the stuff in our lives. So, and great new cars, right? That you can put together and rebuild.
Great old cars.
Old cars. Yeah, I used to be a big Porsche guy. I had a couple of the like 1988, 1989 Porsches, like those used ones. Man, they were fun. I didn't fix them up or anything. I just drove them, but it was a
That's
good
why
time.
they were fun. If you had to fix those up, I think they'd be a little less fun.
I used to take it to the dealer, and I had a joke where I'd take my wallet, like, and I have to get something fixed. I'd take my wallet, I'd put it on the counter, and I'd say, "Hey, give me back what you think I should have." Because every time it was a belt, it was this, it was that, it was just like a money, just a money drain. But it was fun for a while.
Absolutely.
Hey man, thank you so much for being on the show. As we wrap up, I want to thank our wonderful sponsors, of course, Rankings.io. If you're looking to market your law practice and take things to another level, generate leads on a regular basis, check out Rankings.io. And of course, the Rainmakers Roundtable, which is one of my favorite things to do, facilitate high-level dialogues between managing partners from around the country that inspire, motivate, and most importantly, hold them accountable to the growth plans that they have, profit first, and all that. So check that out on my website, fretzin.com. And, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to network with you, they want to do business with you, what are the best digits?
So one of the great things about having a name like Eido is you can always Google Eido, E-I-D-O, and you'll always find me. But otherwise, Walny Legal online, or our phone number is 414-751-7531.
Yeah, really awesome, man. Well, thank you for coming on the show, sharing your quotes, sharing your wisdom, all these life lessons that you've had. And I know I've got notes, and I've even wrote down a couple of people I want to introduce you to as you're talking that just popped into my head. So this is what we do here. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me. This was great.
Yeah, and more to come there. And everybody, listen, thank you for spending time with us. We know how valuable your time is, and these 30 minutes twice a week hopefully is making a big difference. If it is, don't be shy about telling other lawyers about it. We want to spread the word. We want to help as many people as we can, paying it forward. And also give us some kind words on your Apple phone, a couple of thumbs up, stars, hearts, whatever the heck's going on. I don't know. I'm not the technology whiz I think I am. But anyway, take care, everybody. Be safe, be well. We'll talk again soon.